I've gotten and still get a lot of questions about psychology within the game itself. Like how to predict enemy behavior. What do we even mean with this? As far as I'm concerned, it's all about the movement of one specific opponent. When is he going to peek? When is he going to rotate? What is his position? This question is something I can't answer. There's no tool in psychology available to do this for you. At least not in a ranked match, maybe in competitive. If that's not possible to get an answer to those questions, how do I deal with the fact that I find it hard to predict the enemy? Simply said, you need more experience. If you yourself are wondering how to predict an enemy, let me know in the comments how many hours you have played. Bot.Recoil, I want something that makes it easier. I don't want to put thousands upon thousands of hours into the game in order to get some game sense. Okay bro, I get that. I can help you. I can help you to make it easier to get to a higher level of game sense. If you don't have any idea where to start, it can be hard. I've thought about all the different things you need to learn in Rainbow Six Siege in order to get better. I'm going to separate these topics into 3 videos. It builds on one of my previous videos I've made, how to become the best Siege player you can be mentally. However, in this video I'm going to talk about the physical parts I could think of. I might have missed something, so feel free to add on in the comments. To start things off, I know that gaming is not an activity that asks a lot of physical activity. But nonetheless, it's an important part of a certain skill level. The first thing I'd like to note is your brain development. As a young player, under the age of 20, your reaction times are faster than those of an older player. Why is this? As we age, we lose brain connections. This impacts our reaction time. You can divide the brain into 2 parts, the left and right side. In the psychological and medical department, these are known as hemispheres, and are connected by the corpus callosum. This connection functions as a bridge or a dam between the 2 sides of the brain. The older people seem to become, the more crosstalk happens between their hemispheres. This connection functions as a bridge or a dam between the 2 sides of the brain. The older people seem to become, the more crosstalk happens between their hemispheres. As we age, the gateways in the corpus callosum break down, which breaks down the dam effect. This causes crosstalk to occur even when it's not useful. If you're interested in how and why, I linked the article down in the description. The advantage that an older player gets, in fact, is the developed prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain impacts the way you think about consequences, so the strategical aspect of the game becomes easier the older you get. This also explains why it is so hard for young people to make a plan, strategize, etc. This is something that you have little control over, but it's something to consider taking into account. Another thing I came up with are visual cues. To explain this, you need to know how our senses function in general. Our senses are designed to recognize changes in our environment. When something is moving, it catches your attention. Other examples of visual cues are also the threat indicator, damage indicator, bullet tracers, grenade indicator and how it changes color, or the flash indicator. Knowing the different cues, knowing the default orientation on the map, can help you to spot enemies or other kinds of threats. So for example, when you know a certain color placed on the map, the colors that are always there on the same spot, your senses pick up a difference if there is an enemy. If you have visual impairments, it can be hard, like color blindness. If you can't see the color red, it will become hard for you to see the visual cue of a claymore. The red lights coming off, which will put you in a disadvantage. The suppressor messes with these visual cues, the threat indicator is not showing and the bullet traces will disappear. So this might be something to consider if you want to mess with an opponent's senses. Another important part of the game are sound cues. Now I know there are sound issues in the game and that the sound system cannot be fully trusted at all times, but it can help you to understand what's going on, especially if you know what you need to listen for. And in my opinion, the sound developers of the game are doing an amazing job at finding every time a new sound cue for every gadget or every surface an enemy can walk on. Based on the sound of footsteps, you can figure out where the opponent is moving, sprinting, walking or otherwise. As I said, every surface has a distinguishable sound. Carpet, stone, metal, wood. And don't forget drop sounds, vault sounds, or the sounds of footsteps when they're above you. Biggest advantage is also something you could put into the category of physical, because it has to do with the physical limitation of the infrastructure. Data has to travel a physical distance. This means that the defending player, a player holding an angle, is playing in a disadvantage, simply because they are reacting on a delay. So an aggressive type of play, peeking the enemy that is holding an angle, puts you in an advantage. On top of this you can put the reaction time. When you are about to peek, you already know that you're going to peek. You can start shooting even before you register the enemy in your brain. This means that you pre-fire. In this case, your reaction time will be significantly lower than that of a defending player. So if you know that someone is holding a specific angle, you've drawn them, you know where they are, you can pre-fire that spot. And your reaction time gets lower and the chances of getting the kill become higher. But let's say that you are the one holding the angle. You want to have more success holding an angle, right? So when you're holding an angle, you have to make sure that you're not standing still and you're not holding the angle for too long. Because if they drone you, you don't get spotted, they can see you, you know where, they know where you are. So they can pre-fire you, and you cannot have as low of a reaction time to react to that. You want to have it as low as possible. Now, if you're a boomer, this can be hard to have your reaction time as low as possible because of the crosstalk that I explained earlier. But you can keep your reaction time as low as possible by just having a good night of sleep. If you sleep at least 8 hours a night, you should be fine. If you get tired, your reaction time gets worse. So if you want to be in peak conditions, to win as much gunfights as you can, you should make sure that you get those 8 hours per night. Now aim is also a thing that you can put into the physical category. Aim has to do with hand-eye coordination and muscle memory. But there are a lot of misconceptions about what muscle memory is and how you develop it. In case you did not know, you can't actually store memories inside your muscles. So muscle memories are stored in your brain. The motor cortex, to be precise. When you learn a certain skill, like aiming in Siege, there will be more connections made in your motor cortex. It's these connections that make these memories of these movements better and easier to access. Your brain will search for a pattern in the activity you do. So when you set a sensitivity to a default, it will become easier to track your target and to flick between targets. But this only helps if the targets are always on the same distance from each other or are always moving at the same speed, which in Siege rarely happens in an online match. You have different kinds of speeds in Siege, and people are not always on the same positions. So building muscle memory won't be such a big deal in PvP match if you ask me. This also explains why T-Hunt, or rather training grounds, is easier than an online match. They are always on the same positions and moving at the same speed. Although if you learn to flick to common spots, you will see an improvement in your KD stats in the PvP matches. What do I mean with common spots? Well, these are the spots where people generally like to play in. This can be because of Pro League or just how the map has developed over the time it has been in the game. The interesting part you can use of muscle memory is in recoil control. Recoil is a consistent pattern and is therefore storable in your brain. So should you keep the same sensitivity? If you're having troubles with controlling recoil, then definitely. But muscle memory is not the only factor that plays in aiming. Hand-eye coordination is most of the times overlooked. Hand-eye or eye-hand coordination is the ability to do activities that require the simultaneous use of our hands and eyes, like aiming in Siege or even real life. You use your eyes to guide your hands to carry out a movement. This is a cognitive skill, which means that it's a brain-based skill. This means that it has more to do with the way we learn, remember, solve problems and pay attention, rather than actual knowledge. You don't need to know the map in order to move around your crosshair. You don't need to know the exact centimeters you have to move your hand over your mouse pad in order to move around your crosshair. So when your hand-eye coordination improves, your aim will become better. It will become easier to move your crosshair just by using your eyes to guide your hand. How do you improve your hand-eye coordination? Train consistently the neural connections. Sounds difficult, but it isn't. It's basically playing Siege regularly on a different sensitivity. Your brain needs to adapt when you use a different sensitivity. It helps your connection to strengthen and to pay more attention to what you're actually doing. So if you really want to get better aim, you should change your sensitivity often. I've even heard Pengu from G2 say in one of his streams that he changes his sensitivity every week or so. Now is Pengu not one of the crazy gunners in Pro League, like Polo or Shaiko, but he has Pro League level aim and is able to compete at this level. Now it's conclusion time. The physical aspect of becoming the best Siege player you can be has to do with the physical restrictions and improvements you can make. The physical limitations in Rainbow Six Siege is mainly the infrastructure, physical distance. You can use this in your advantage to play aggressively. The older you become, the smarter you have to play, because your reaction time will go up. By having a night of 8 hours of sleep, you make sure that despite the limitations that age brings, your reaction time is as good as it can be. The last part of the physical domain I could think of, at least, was aiming. You use your muscles to move your operator and crosshair. If you want to improve your overall control of your crosshair, you should focus on the brain connections that make this possible. You do this by changing your sensitivity often and to get used to it, and then to change it again. You keep your brain occupied in this way. If you already have good aim, you should settle on a specific sensitivity. Use this to learn to flick certain common spots, like the pixel peaks defenders can hold on the chassis of the bomb, or other common spots or angles defenders like to hold. So basically, you need to set goals for yourself. Where do I have to focus on in order to get to the next level? You don't have to focus on how to get to the top, how to become champion, but how do I get to the next level? If you're a copper 5, you should not focus on how to become a platinum, but rather on how to become a copper 4. This is an easier goal to reach, and is an improvement overall. It will help you to keep motivated. Maybe your ultimate goal is to reach platinum, but you won't become platinum without a grind, and you need to enjoy the grind in order to stay motivated and to reach your ultimate goal. So focus on one step at a time. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the 300 subscribers.